Whispers of the Pines. The first time Emma saw her, she wasn't sure if it was real. A fleeting shadow darted through the pines at dusk, a swirl of russet leaves following its wake. The forest behind their home was thick and untamed, and although Emma often let her 3-year-old daughter, Lily, wander the edge, she'd always believed it was deserted. Until now. Maybe it's just a deer, Emma whispered to herself, clutching the mug of tea tighter as she peered out from the kitchen window. But something in her gut told her otherwise. Later that night, as she stood brushing her teeth, Emma hesitated. "There's someone out there," she told her husband Mark. Mark frowned, setting down his book. "Out there? Like, in the woods?" Emma nodded. "I saw movement. It was too fast for a deer." Mark chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Probably just a raccoon. You've been watching too many of those true crime shows." But as the days passed, Emma's unease grew. She began to notice other signs. Footprints in the soil near the tree line, faint traces of a fire long extinguished, and most heartbreaking of all, a weathered patchwork quilt tucked carefully under a tree. Whoever this was, they weren't just passing through. They were living there. It was late November when Lily saw her first. "Mommy, there's a lady," she chirped one afternoon, pointing toward the woods. Emma's breath hitched. "Where, sweetie?" Lily squinted, her tiny face serious. "She's hiding. She has a red coat, like mine." Emma's heart raced. She scanned the pines but saw nothing. That night, as Mark put Lily to bed, Emma slipped on her jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped into the forest. The air was cold and damp, the earth soft beneath her boots. "Hello," she called softly, her breath misting in the air. "I know you're out here. It's okay, I just want to talk." Silence answered her, but as she turned to leave, a faint rustling stopped her in her tracks. Emma swung the flashlight toward the sound, and there, half hidden behind a tree, was a woman. Her face was gaunt, her hair tangled and streaked with grey despite her youthful features. The red coat Lily had described hung loosely on her frame, patched and frayed. Emma took a step forward, her heart aching at the sight. "It's okay," Emma said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you." The woman didn't move, her eyes wide and wary like a cornered animal. "I'll leave food here tomorrow," Emma continued. "If you need help, we're here." Over the next week, Emma left small offerings at the edge of the forest. Bread, fruit, even a warm blanket. Each morning they were gone. Then, one evening, as snow began to fall, the woman finally emerged. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raspy and fragile. She stood at the edge of the yard, snowflakes clinging to her hair. "I'm sorry for being here. I didn't mean to scare you." Emma stepped closer. "You're not scaring us, but you can't stay out here in this weather. Please, come inside." The woman hesitated, her eyes flicking to the warm glow of the house. "I don't want to be a burden." "You won't be," Emma promised. "Let us help." Mark was startled when Emma led the woman inside. "This is Claire," Emma explained. "She's been living in the woods." Mark looked between them, his brow furrowing. "Living in the woods? But—" "Hi," Claire said softly, offering a weak smile. Mark sighed and gestured toward the couch. "Well, you're here now. Make yourself at home." It took time for Claire to open up, but slowly Emma and Mark pieced together her story. She had been a teacher once, in a life that felt like another world. A series of tragedies, her husband's sudden death, mounting medical bills, and the loss of her home, had left her adrift. She had tried shelters, but the crowds and noise overwhelmed her. The forest, lonely as it was, felt safer. As the weeks passed, Claire became part of the family. She helped Emma bake cookies, read stories to Lily, and even fixed Mark's squeaky porch swing. But it wasn't just Claire who was changing. The family was too. They grew closer, more grateful for what they had, and more aware of the struggles others faced. One evening, As they sat by the fire, Claire turned to Emma and Mark. "You saved my life," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Emma reached over, taking Claire's hand. "You don't have to. We're family now." Claire eventually found her footing again with Emma and Mark's support. She began teaching part-time at a community centre, using her skills to help others. Though she moved into her own place, she visited often, her laughter filling the house that had once seemed so quiet. The forest remained, its secrets now a part of their shared history. And every time Emma looked out at the trees, she didn't see shadows anymore. She saw hope. Spring brought new life to the forest behind the house, and with it, Claire's growth into her renewed life. She had moved into a modest apartment in town, but she still visited Emma, Mark, and Lily at least once a week. To Lily, Claire was like a second mother, someone who would kneel down to her level and build towers of blocks, or braid her hair while singing old folk songs. It was one of these visits on a warm April afternoon when Claire hesitated before leaving. She lingered in the doorway, her hands twisting nervously. Emma noticed immediately. "Everything okay?" Emma asked, leaning against the kitchen counter. Claire nodded, then shook her head. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you both about something. It's an idea." Mark looked up from the dining table where he was fixing Lily's toy truck. "An idea? Sounds intriguing." Claire stepped inside and took a deep breath. "I've been volunteering at the shelter downtown," she began. "There are so many people like I was, scared, alone, unsure of where to turn. I want to do more, but I'd need help." Emma's brows furrowed in concern. "Of course we'll help. What do you have in mind?" Claire clasped her hands together, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "I want to create a transitional space, a small community for people in need. Not just a shelter, but somewhere safe, with access to therapy, skills training, and support. A place where people can rebuild their lives." The next few months were a whirlwind of planning and effort. Claire held fundraisers, spoke at community meetings, and partnered with local organisations. By autumn, the first building, a small but welcoming house with 6 rooms and a shared kitchen, was ready. The community rallied around the project, donating furniture, supplies, and time to bring the vision to life. On the day of the grand opening, as Claire cut the ribbon, applause erupted. But it wasn't just the sound of celebration, it was the sound of hope, a promise to everyone who stepped through those doors. Years passed, and the transitional home, named Pine Haven in honour of the forest that had sheltered Claire, became a beacon of hope in the community. Claire continued to pour her heart into her work, mentoring residents and reminding them that a single act of kindness could change a life. Emma and Mark watched with pride as Claire's dream grew, expanding into a network of support that reached far beyond their small town. Lily, now a teenager, often volunteered at Pine Haven, inspired by the woman who had once lived behind their home. One summer evening, Claire joined the family for dinner. As they sat around the table, laughter and warmth filling the room, Emma couldn't help but reflect on how far they had all come. "It's funny," Emma said, her voice soft. "We thought we were helping you that winter, but really, you helped us too. You reminded us of what it means to care, to see the world beyond our bubble." Claire smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. "And you reminded me that no matter how lost we feel, there's always a way back, with the right people by your side." As the sun set over the forest, its golden light filtering through the trees, Emma realised the forest wasn't just a backdrop to their story. It was a symbol of resilience, of the beauty that could grow in even the harshest conditions. They had all found something extraordinary in those woods, a new beginning, a family, and the courage to change lives together. Claire quickly found that running Pine Haven wasn't just about providing a roof over someone's head. It was about rebuilding trust, creating bonds, and helping people rediscover their worth. Each resident brought a story as unique as hers: a young mother fleeing domestic violence, a veteran grappling with PTSD, and even a teenager who had aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. Emma and Mark became Pine Haven's unofficial supporters. Emma spent her weekends teaching basic cooking classes to the residents, while Mark fixed leaky faucets and repaired furniture. Lily loved visiting too, often carting around her sketchpad and drawing pictures for the residents. One picture, a brightly coloured house surrounded by smiling stick figures, ended up framed in Claire's office. One winter, just as Pine Haven was approaching its 3rd year, disaster struck. A burst pipe flooded the main living area, forcing the residents to temporarily relocate to a nearby church. The damage was extensive and the repair estimates were daunting. For a moment, Claire felt the crushing weight of hopelessness creeping back, but this time she wasn't alone. The community rallied around Pine Haven once again. Emma organised a bake sale at the local elementary school, where Lily now attended. Mark connected with local businesses to source discounted materials. Even Claire's residents chipped in, working tirelessly to clean up and salvage what they could. During one particularly cold morning, as they scrubbed mud off the floors, one of the residents, a young man named Jason, paused and looked at Claire. "Why do you do all this?" he asked, his voice tinged with both awe and disbelief. Claire wiped her brow, smiling softly. "Because someone once believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And now I want to pass that on." Jason nodded, his eyes lingering on her with newfound respect. "I hope one day I can do the same." Jason, who had arrived at Pine Haven 6 months earlier after losing his job and home, became one of Claire's greatest success stories. Inspired by her unwavering dedication, he enrolled in vocational training and earned a certification in carpentry. By spring, he had secured a full-time job and saved enough money to move into his own apartment. At his farewell dinner, a tradition Claire had started to celebrate residents who were ready to transition, Jason stood to give a toast. "I came here feeling like a failure," he said, his voice trembling. "But Claire and all of you showed me that it's never too late to start over. I wouldn't be here today without Pine Haven." Claire wiped her eyes as everyone raised their glasses. "Here's to you, Jason," she said, "and to the incredible future ahead of you." Jason wasn't the only one whose life was transformed. Pine Haven's alumni often returned to volunteer, creating a ripple effect of kindness and community. One former resident, Maria, started a support group for single mothers, while another, Victor, opened a landscaping business and hired other Pine Haven graduates. Emma and Mark's family grew too. They welcomed a second child, a boy named Owen, who adored Claire from the moment he could crawl. For Claire, the time she spent with Emma's family became her sanctuary, a reminder of the love and connection that had pulled her from the brink. One evening, as they all sat around a bonfire in the backyard, Claire turned to Emma. "Do you ever think about that night?" Claire asked. "When you found me in the woods?" Emma smiled, her gaze distant as she stared into the flames. "All the time. It feels like another life," Claire nodded. "For me, it was the beginning of a new one." Years later, Pine Haven expanded to include a second building, funded by a generous grant Claire had worked tirelessly to secure. The new space provided additional rooms, a childcare centre, and even a small garden where residents could grow their own food. The garden became a symbol of renewal, proof that even in the hardest soil, life could thrive. Lily, now a young adult, took an active role in the organisation. Inspired by Claire's journey, she pursued a degree in social work, determined to help others as Claire had. Her little brother Owen, not to be outdone, became a regular fixture at Pine Haven's events, often entertaining children with magic tricks he'd taught himself. On the 10th anniversary of Pine Haven's founding, Claire stood on the stage at a community celebration. The crowd was a sea of faces, current and former residents, volunteers, donors, and friends. Emma, Mark, Lily, and Owen were front and centre, beaming with pride. "I don't know where I'd be today without all of you," Claire began, her voice steady but emotional. "You didn't just give me a home, you gave me a purpose, and together we've created something beautiful, a place where no one has to face life's challenges alone." As the crowd erupted into applause, Claire caught Emma's eye and smiled. They had come so far from that cold November night, and though the journey hadn't been easy, it had been worth every step. That night, as Claire walked through the forest behind Emma's home, she paused beneath the towering pines. The trees whispered softly in the wind, their branches swaying like they were alive. She closed her eyes and whispered a quiet thank you to the forest that had once sheltered her, and to the family that had given her a second chance. Life had come full circle, and the future stretched before her like an endless, sunlit path. The anniversary celebration of Pinehaven marked a turning point, not just for the organisation, but for Claire's personal journey. Surrounded by the faces of those she had helped and those who had helped her, Claire felt a profound sense of peace. It was as if all the broken pieces of her past had woven themselves into a tapestry of hope and love. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Emma, Mark, and their children stayed behind to help clean up. Claire stood with them in the quiet, glowing warmth of the garden lights, watching Lily and Owen chase fireflies across the lawn. "You've built something incredible," Emma said, handing Claire a cup of tea. "And look at all the lives you've touched." Claire smiled, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you. You and Mark were the first people to show me that I was worth saving." Emma shook her head gently. "You saved yourself, Claire. We just gave you a nudge." As they finished cleaning up, a familiar face approached. Alex, a kind and patient man who had been volunteering at Pinehaven for over a year, walked up to Claire, looking unusually nervous. Over the past months, their shared commitment to the community had blossomed into something more, though Claire had been cautious about allowing herself to hope for a romantic future. "Claire," Alex began, his voice soft but steady. "Can we talk?" "Of course," Claire replied, setting her tea aside. He led her to a quiet corner of the garden, where twinkling lights cast a golden glow over the blooming flowers. "You've shown me what resilience looks like," Alex said, taking her hands. "You've taught me that love isn't just about finding someone. It's about building something together, and I want to build that with you." Claire's breath caught as Alex pulled a small box from his pocket. Opening it to reveal a simple, elegant ring, he knelt on one knee. "Claire, will you marry me?" Tears filled Claire's eyes as she nodded, her voice trembling with joy. Yes, I will." Cheers erupted from the other side of the garden, where Emma, Mark, Lily, and Owen had been eavesdropping. Laughing through her tears, Claire hugged Alex tightly, her heart fuller than it had ever been. Claire and Alex's wedding, held in the garden of Pinehaven, was a celebration of love, resilience, and community. Residents past and present attended, along with friends, volunteers, and of course, Emma's family. Lily served as the flower girl, scattering petals with dramatic flair, while Owen carried the rings with the utmost seriousness. As Claire stood with Alex, gazing at the faces of those who had become her family, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had once believed her life was over, but now she saw that it had only just begun. After the ceremony, Claire pulled Emma aside. "You and your family saved me in more ways than I can say," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And now I'm happier than I ever dreamed I could be." Emma hugged her tightly. "You've given us so much, Claire. Seeing you happy is the greatest gift we could ask for." Years later, Pinehaven expanded into a network of transitional homes, helping hundreds of people find stability and hope. Claire and Alex remained at the heart of the organisation, their love and partnership inspiring everyone who crossed their path. Emma and Mark, now grandparents, often spent evenings with Claire and Alex, reminiscing about how their journey had begun. Lily, now a social worker, and Owen, a teacher, continued to carry on the legacy of kindness they had grown up with. On Claire's 50th birthday, the family gathered in the backyard of Emma's home. The forest behind the house, once a place of isolation, now stood as a reminder of resilience and renewal. As they laughed, shared stories, and toasted to the future, Claire looked around at the faces she loved most. Her heart swelled with the knowledge that she had not only found a home, but had also helped create one for so many others. For Claire, Emma, and everyone their kindness had touched, life was no longer about surviving. It was about thriving. And that, Claire realised, was the happiest ending of all. The end.